Hello once again. So today I'm going to go over some more objects that you can place within your city or whatever it is that you're making, like power lines or lamp posts. I'm also going to talk a little bit about trees and plants and things, and some textures that you can add as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is things like power lines. These power lines I have already finished. They're pretty close together, but other than that, I feel like they worked out perfectly fine. And so I'm going to do something similar by putting lamp posts down along the side of my sidewalk here. The first thing that you need is a guideline for the bottom, and the next thing you need is a guideline for the top of your posts. So I'm going to put my bottom guideline in first. I drew that pretty lightly. I don't know if you could see it. This tells me where the foot of each lamppost should be. Now I'm going to draw my first lamppost. It's the one that is closest to us. And so you want to think about the size of everything around your drawing. How big should something like this lamppost be compared to everything else? And I feel like that's a pretty good height right there. I'm going to make it curved on the bottom like a cylinder. The lamppost that is closest to us is going to be the one that has the most detail in it for sure, because it is closest to us. We see more of it. All right, so that is the beginning of my lamppost. I'm going to draw a little fancy thing on top. All right, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a bunch of lampposts that look like this, going off into the distance. So now I know how tall this one is. That means that I'm going to line up the top with the vanishing point to make my second guideline. Remember, our first guideline is along the ground. Our second guideline is going to be the guideline to show us how tall to make each one. So now my next lamppost, if I wanted to put it here, I know that the foot is going to be there because that's where my guideline is. It needs to be vertical, because if it's not vertical, it's going to look like it's tipping over. Alrighty, so here's this one. I'm actually going to make another guideline for the bottom of my actual light so that I can see how big that part should be. Okay, so my second lamppost is going to be that large. I'm going to have a little bit of detail, not as much as the other one though, because it is further away. I can see about how big the light needs to be compared to the other one. There we go. Now I'm going to put my next lamppost. So along the bottom, I'm going to go to about here. Okay, actually, I'm going to go a little closer. There. Now, if that's where the foot is, I need to line it up. Make sure that my lamppost is vertical. Like that. Voila. If I want to make another one here, make sure it's vertical. And it's going from the top of our guideline to the bottom of it. There's my lamppost. So now I can see how tall they are. Now this same thing applies to these. You can see my guideline along the bottom. I put right there. The other guideline you can see going to this one right there. And so when you are drawing these, you want to start with two guidelines that tell you where the top and bottom is. That's enough about lampposts. Now let's talk about trees. A lot of you want to put trees in your drawing. Now, the thing about trees is you just want to make sure they're the right size. Same with bushes and stuff. You can do some pretty awesome things with trees and bushes, especially if there's a part of your drawing that you just can't quite get just right. You could put a tree on top of it so they don't see that part. And so I would wait to do trees and bushes and stuff until the end. Now, if I was going to put a tree next to this building right here, I've got this little flower bed, I could use a tree right there. If I draw that tree so that I have it the right size compared to my building, then I'm going to do something similar to what I did here, which is to put some guidelines in that'll help me compare how tall my other trees should be compared to where that one is. Because if they're closer trees, they're going to be bigger. So I'm going to draw my tree. It's not sprouting out from the side of my sidewalk or anything. It is just gonna be a tree. I'm gonna make it have a pretty straight trunk. I'm gonna throw in a couple branches. I'm gonna make it fluffy tree. And it's gonna overlap in front of my house a little bit. So with trees and bushes and things, you will end up erasing parts of your building that go behind the trees and bushes and stuff. That's one other reason I would wait to do those till the end so that you can place them in good places so that you know they're not going to be wrecking into anything important. All right, so that tree is a good size compared to my building. Now, if I wanted to put another tree in the backyard here, I want to make sure that it's the right size. So if I put a guideline from my vanishing point to the bottom of my tree, okay, and then from the vanishing point to the top of my tree, remember it's like a circle, boom, right there. All right, so there's this guideline. So if I was going to put a tree in this side yard, I could, and I would know that it was this tall because it would go from this guideline to this guideline. So if it's going to be this tall, if it was in the side yard, but I want to put it in the backyard, then I just transfer it sideways. It's going to be about that big. And so this is where the trunk is in the backyard. Okay, this one's going to be a little bit larger because it's closer. We're going to see more detail. It's going to cover up my door a bit. Okay. And I make tree fluff. Remember, we are going to be adding some color and stuff to these. So if you add a lot of detail with your lines, then you might end up with a lot of eraser on there. Or not eraser, but pencil line that might affect your color. So there's another tree. Same thing with bushes. I'm gonna put a bush in front of my stairs right here. Boom. It's gonna be about that big. Erase what's behind it. Now if I was gonna make a row of them, I'm gonna put in my guidelines. The bottom of it is about there, remember? Boom. So there's my guideline, super light. And then to the top of it, boom. That's where it is in the top. So my next bush would go from here to there. Okay, and then my last one, just gonna scoot this guy there, this one here. All right, so now I've got 3 bushes in a row, and they're all good size compared to each other. So this is something that you can do all around your drawing, add things like trees and bushes and stuff. Now let's talk about textures on your buildings, because I've got some buildings over here that are really empty looking and very plain. So one thing that you can do to a building is to add windows all over the building, like a skyscraper would be. Another thing you can do is add bricks. So I am going to look at my vertical. This line right here, I'm going to put some guide little tick marks. What I want here is for them to all be about equally spaced from each other. If you use a ruler, then you can make sure that those are very accurate. Now I'm going to take my straight edge and I'm going to draw an orthogonal line from each of these tick marks to the other side of my building. Because this is a tall building, then you can see that the top line goes down toward the vanishing point. But as I go further down the building, they're pointing more and more kind of upwards. Now these lines that I am putting on the building, this is a texture that you could put on one of your buildings and just leave it like this. Or you can go in and turn all these pieces into individual windows. Or you can turn them into bricks. But this is the way that I would start a lot of the textures that end up on a side of a building. On the front face that's facing us, these same tick marks are going to have horizontal lines on this side. All right, now the next part that I'm going to show you is something that my people who totally get 1 point perspective, this is going to make a whole lot of sense to you, and you might really like to do this on yours. But my people who are still a little bit confused, this might just be way too much for you. But watch this trick. I'm going to make a really light diagonal line that's a guideline from one corner of the side of my building to the opposite corner. That guideline will tell me where to put my vertical lines. Again, you would press super lightly with this. I'm going to put mine a little bit darker so that you can see it in the camera. All right, so that diagonal line, where it intersects each of the first lines that I made, I am going to put a little dot, 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 dot. And you can see clearly where those lines come together. Where those lines come together is where each vertical line should be. This is a trick that works again on the orthogonal side of a building, not on the side that's facing you. And it will help us to make squares. Okay, my first vertical is right there where that intersection is. My next one, right there where that intersection is. Now I'm lining up with that dot. What you'll notice is that as the lines are getting closer and closer to the vanishing point, they are getting a little bit closer together as they go along. What this will do is show that same illusion of depth, that things that are further away are getting smaller and smaller. Ta-da! And so now you would want to get rid of your diagonal guideline, which is not a problem if you made it really light. And so we've got sort of a checkerboard thing going on. And there's a lot you can do with that. On this side, they would just be vertical lines. So that's something you can do. If you want to make bricks, then you can start your building the same way with your orthogonal lines that fan out. So tick marks that are about evenly spaced, orthogonal lines going to the vanishing point. Now, if you want to make bricks, they're not like squares that are all stacked on top of each other. They alternate, because that's how you put bricks on a wall. And so, with this building, I'm going to alternate my vertical lines. So, on this wall, I'm going to make them, I'm going to try to match this guy, where they're getting smaller as they go away. Now here I'm just guessing. Now for my next row of bricks, I'm not going to put it in the same place, the vertical line. I'm going to scooch it so that it's in between the first row. Make sure that these lines are vertical. It's very easy to accidentally tip them over and make them crooked. You can use your straight edge here. I can line it up so that it's vertical and make every other line. So that one, skip, that one, skip, that one, skip, that one, skip, and this one. My next row. If this is too much for your brain, then you don't have to do anything this complicated. You should add some textures to some of your buildings, but you can keep it pretty simple and just make those orthogonal lines like I started both of these instead of making all of the other ones. Okay, so these are some textures that you can add to your buildings. If you have buildings that are really close to the front of your drawing, then those are going to be the ones that probably have more texture than if there's one that's way far away, way off in the background. My river walk one, this building, I could probably put a lot of detail into all of these windows and stuff, whereas this guy right here, not as much detail. Take your time with it, make it look nice, enjoy.